Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and welcome to my card using elements from the Simon Says Stamp April 2019 card kit. So I started off by die cutting some watercolor paper, and I just used B watercolor paper. I don't think it really matters what kind you use for something like this, but that's what I used, and I die cut it with the Rainboot planter wafer die. And then I pulled out my little Prima Pastel Dreams watercolor palette and my Tonic Nuvo brushes, and I am just doing some fairly simple watercoloring to give this, you know, the color and texture and whatnot. So I started with the boots because that's kind of the main part of this. And the colors I'm mixing, I'm kind of basing them on the pattern paper that also comes in the kit. It's the Simple Stories paper. So it had this kind of sort of aqua-ish blue. It's, you know, they're muted sort of pastel colors. That's also why I chose this palette. So I'm kind of fiddling around and mixing the colors as I go along to get them similar to the colors in the papers, because I want to use the papers on my card as well, of course. So I did kind of my first layer of color, and then I'm going back in and adding a bit more definition so you can tell that there's two boots. Like the die does imprint like embossed lines in that too, which makes it kind of nice. It gives you that just natural definition, but then it also kind of gives you a guide, whether you want to color it with, you can watercolor it. You could use Copic markers. I was actually going to do Copic markers because I was like, ooh, that would look really nice. Also, of course, I had to add some mud to the boots. Clean rubber boots are kind of like an oxymoron in a way. So I started by like just painting on the mud, but then I was like, well, if they're muddy, like they're going to get really, you know, dirty. So then I kind of splattered on the mud and really let it, you know, do its sort of own thing, which I really like. Like, it made a mess, but it was fun. And it just, I like how it ended up looking, you know, kind of splattered all over the place. So once I had that done, then I was using my heat tool just to dry things, because obviously if one area is wet and then you paint right next to it, the colors will start, you know, bleeding into each other. So anywho, like I said, there's score lines and whatnot. Like there's score lines between the boots. There's score lines on the flowers just to give it all that little bits of definition. But if you didn't want to color, you could also like paper piece this, just run it through with it, you know. I was thinking like the boots would look so cute. You could paper piece them and do, you know, patterned like anything, any sort of, because like especially nowadays, rubber boots come in every pattern under the sun. So you could paper piece them, you could paper piece the flowers. Like, again, the sky's the limit. This would actually be really easy to do paper piecing with. So I did all my painting, and then for the stems and leaves, I actually pulled out the Prima Tropicals palette just because I needed a more like green, a little bit more of a like intense green, because that's the one thing, the pastels is definitely very pastel colors. So this just made it easier. Just pulled that out, mixed a couple of the greens, like a green and a sort of a yellowy green sort of color together, just to get it to the shade I wanted. Painted that on, and then just intensified the color a little bit and painted that on again, just to build up those layers, give it a little more definition so it's not just one solid color. Yeah, I don't have a whole, like, I keep trying to think of like other tips other than practice. I know I sound like a broken record. 1,500 plus videos on YouTube, but I pretty much am a broken record. That's my, and 5 kids. It's my life. But it's true. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I was saying like when I first attempted watercoloring a few years ago, I remember struggling so much. Like I would have an idea in my head, or I would see something someone else would create, and it wouldn't work, and I couldn't get it to work, and I couldn't figure out what on earth I was doing. Practice. Like I would watch videos, I started, you know, slowly, and the more I started playing with it, the more I would experiment. Another good thing is to use good quality products. It literally makes it, especially paper, it does. This B watercolor paper is really nice. Like this is decent. For the price you pay, this is really decent watercolor paper. Arches is one of the best ones. It's hefty in price, but this B watercolor paper, you get a lot for your dollar, and it's really nice. So speaking of that, I die cut another piece of the B watercolor paper just with one of Simon's nested circle dies. And then I was very much channeling like Debbie Hughes at this point. She does these gorgeous, like really soft watercolor backgrounds for some of her cards. And I was really thinking of her when I did this. She's one to watch too. The things she does with watercolor is I can watch her make cards all day, every day, and her Scottish accent just makes me happy. So if you don't subscribe to Debbie Hughes, I highly recommend her, and her just coloring in general, but watercoloring is really something she excels at. So I did my little simple background, and then I have those pattern papers that I cut down. And I was originally going to heat emboss the sentiment onto some of the dark chocolate cardstock that comes in the kit, but then decided to actually just heat emboss the sentiment right on this strip of pattern paper, because I thought that would kind of be sort of cute. So I used my anti-static powder tool on it, and then I just have a sentiment from the Hello Darling stamp set that comes in the kit. All of this is also available separately, and I will have links to everything separately, because especially if you're watching this down the road, the kit will be sold out. But I link to all the things. So I stamped the sentiment with clear embossing ink, and then I used detail white embossing powder, melted that with my heat tool, and then even though I'm going to use the embossing powder again, I still funnel it back into the container so that I do not knock over these. Same with my coffee filter. The amount of times I've, you know, accidentally grabbed that and dumped it everywhere. Anyway, back to the card. I have my pattern papers. I am going to start adhering everything together with my little Xyron tape runner. This was just a convenience move because, you know, quick and easy, and I don't even have to wait for glue to dry. So I'm going to adhere my pattern papers together, and the largest one is A2 size, so 4¼ by 5½. So it's going to completely cover my card front. So I already had like a rough idea in my head, like off camera. I had started laying things out, so I kind of knew where I was going to adhere everything. A lot of times, you know, people like ask those questions like how do you know what to do? How do you have it all figured out? You know, on camera, everything looks so much easier. The magic of editing, my videos would be 10 times longer and 10 times more boring if I included all the randomness of just, you know, me sitting and figuring a layout, or me, you know, not even being on camera because I'm not paying attention, and all those things. Like, it's just real life most of the time. With the magic of editing, I can make it look like I know what I'm doing. So, anywho, I used thin 3D foam squares to pop up this watercolored Rainboot image, just to give it that little extra bit, you know, of dimension. So I popped those on there, and then I kind of popped that into place. And then I decided, since the whole card is covered, why not make it a little bit more surprising when you open it up and it's not just, you know, white, which is 99% of the time I do my card bases white. So instead I used cotton candy cardstock, cut to 4¼ by 11, scored at 5½ with my little score buddy and my Teflon bone folder. Say that 3 times fast. So I use that for my card base, and on the inside I am going to white heat emboss another sentiment from this Hello Darling stamp set. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Anti-static powder tool, stamp the image with the clear embossing ink, detail white embossing powder, melt that with my heat tool. And then I had grabbed another pattern paper that came in the kit to use on the inside of the card, just to, you know, give it a little more color, a little more pattern, just a little more zhuzh. So after I got this melted with my heat tool, I'm going to adhere this strip of pattern paper to the inside of the card, flip it over, trim off the excess with my scissors so everything is neat and orderly as it should be. And then I'm going to adhere my card front to the card base, again, just using that same tape runner adhesive from Xyron. And then once I have this in place, I am going to add some of the Bohemian Teal vintage drops from Nuvo. In the kit, you get a little baby bottle. It's like the most adorable thing ever. I have the whole set of them. I'd bought them a while ago. I think I had bought them when I was really sick, and I shockingly did not do a haul video like showing that, which is not the norm for me because I show you guys everything. But I don't think I showed these. So I've had them sitting, and that's part of why I show everything, because it encourages me to use them. So I've literally had these vintage drops for months now, and I didn't show them in a haul video. So I just have this weird thing about not using them. Anyway. So that's what I used. And these, they're called vintage drops. They come in a different sort of bottle. They dry matte, unlike the other Nuvo drops. So you have to let them dry pretty much overnight. So I also use either the tip of my scissors or a pin if I do have air bubbles, just to pop the air bubble, thwack the card onto a surface, any surface, doesn't matter. That helps to smooth everything out and flatten them out a little bit more so they dry faster. And that finishes off the card. So you can kind of see there, they have a little bit of a sheen to them, not really, but they are matte compared to the, you know, regular Nuvo drops. So it's just, they're just fun. So as always, I'll have a link below the video. I'll have a link to my blog post. I'll link to all the supplies used, like I said, so you guys can check that out in the description box below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!